A witch, eyes wide with fear, trembling as she throws handfuls of coins out the door, murmuring incoherent incantations under her breath. But she's not afraid of ghosts. She's not afraid of death. She's afraid of you, afraid of the light you carry, the light of truth, the light of freedom, the light of Sagittarius. Because when you walk in, there's no room left for lies to hide. What kind of power makes a seasoned witch tremble? And why? Are you the one she's terrified of in the dark? The answer lies within your birth chart, and it's about to be revealed. Don't walk away from this message. If something in you just stirred, even the faintest tremble, maybe you're ready to remember who you truly are. Not everyone is prepared to see the truth. But if you're still here, perhaps you are one of the chosen. Take a deep breath, and let me guide you deeper into the mystery of your Sagittarius power and the reason why darkness has begun to tremble. Maybe you've heard it before. You're too blunt, too honest, hard to read. And maybe there were days you asked yourself, why do I feel so different from everyone else? But today, let me whisper something to you. You're not strange. You're Sagittarius. And you're dangerous in a way no one ever taught you to understand. Dangerous, not because you harm, but because you can't be tamed. You enter people's lives like a gust of wind, ungraspable, uncontainable. And just when they think they've grown used to your freedom, you ignite something in them. Not a fire that burns, but a fire that awakens. A fire that forces them to face what they've long buried. A fire that leaves no room for facades. And that is why you're dangerous. You don't entertain the performative. You don't follow the script. You don't sit quietly in someone else's comfort zone just to make them feel safe. You speak truths no one dares voice. You ask questions that unsettle. You laugh at the boundaries society swears by, like they're nothing more than dusty old rules no one bothered to question. And yes, because of that, you've been misunderstood. You've been called arrogant, tactless, hard to love. But do you want to know the truth? That's just how sleeping souls react when they meet a spirit that's already awake. You didn't come into this world to make anyone comfortable. You came to stir, to expand, to illuminate. Jupiter, your ruling planet, is the symbol of higher knowledge, of vast horizons, of justice and truths too big for most to face. And you, dear Sagittarius, you are the one who carries that torch into places where light has never reached. You're not afraid to walk alone, because you know those meant to walk with you will never need to be held back. They'll simply follow. You're not afraid of loss, because you understand anything that no longer resonates with your soul was only ever meant to leave, to make room for what truly belongs. On your path, you've touched souls who were fast asleep in the middle of their lives. You've loved those who didn't know how to love their own freedom. You've forgiven those who feared the light in you and tried to silence it. But the truth is, you can't extinguish a fire that was born from the soul. You can ignore it, run from it, label it too much. But one day, when the night stretches long and deep, that fire will be the only thing left to guide you home. They call you dangerous because they can't control you. They don't know how to contain a spirit like yours within the boundaries they've built. They fear that if they stay around you too long, they'll have to look into themselves. Raw, unmasked, unfiltered. You felt lonely because of that, haven't you? You've thought maybe you should soften, dim your flame, be less intense. But darling, light never needs to apologize for shining. You are the only one brave enough to ask, am I living in truth or just living for approval? The only one bold enough to walk away from something familiar simply because your soul whispered, this no longer feels right. You are not stubborn. You are loyal to the truth, even when it costs you everything. Maybe you don't feel special because you've been too busy chasing new horizons, too busy healing others, too busy protecting yourself from a world that misunderstood your brilliance. But today, let me remind you, you are the sacred fire that makes witches tremble. You are the reason darkness can't sleep easy. You don't have to scream. You don't have to fight back. Just by being wholly, fully you, the false world begins to melt away. So don't dim your light just because someone else isn't ready for it. Don't shrink your soul to fit into stories that no longer serve you. And never forget, the world doesn't need you obedient. It needs you awakened. It needs you, Sagittarius, the one who dares to burn through illusions and blaze a path for the sacred to rise again. If your heart is quietly trembling right now, if something inside you just whispered, "That's me," then stay, because the next part will reveal something even the witch inside you is still afraid to face. But you know what? The light within you, it's not just truth. It's an ancient fire, a force they call Bach Coc, and that is what truly makes the witch afraid. Maybe you've thought, "I'm strong, so why do I still feel so fragile? I keep walking, speaking, facing, and yet, why does my heart still feel so empty sometimes?" You are not alone in that feeling. Because when you carry the light of Bach Coc within you, you are not only the one who leads, but often the one who carries the deepest wounds. Bach Coc is not an ordinary fire. It is a flame born from pain, from the yearning to live authentically, from the journey through the darkest corners of the soul. That flame does not destroy, it transforms. It does not burn, it purifies. And you are that kind of flame. You don't need to raise your voice to be heard. Your presence alone, aware, truthful, unguarded, is enough to make the masks around you begin to fall away. They say light always defeats darkness, but the truth is, light does not come to fight. It comes to invite, to remind, to gently tap a sleeping soul on the shoulder and whisper, "Wake up, there's something bigger you're meant to live for." You've made others uncomfortable simply by living in truth. You've been left behind because you refused to compromise on what no longer resonated with your heart. You've been called too intense, too radical, too independent. But do you know why? Because you cannot be controlled. And that's exactly why you are meant to lead. Because you won't bow down, you are able to lift others up. Because you live honestly, souls are watching you, and slowly remembering who they are through your flame. You may not even realize it, but every time you forgive, a piece of darkness dissolves. Every time you speak the truth, a curse is broken. Every time you rise after falling, you prove that light never disappears, no matter how deeply it's been buried. And that is what the witch fears most. She doesn't fear your screaming. She fears your calm when facing what others run from. She fears your eyes, not full of anger, but full of knowing. She fears you because you are no longer afraid. You no longer run from your emotions, no longer pretend to be okay, no longer ask for permission to be yourself. You've started choosing truth, even when it meant losing someone you once loved. You've started choosing freedom, even when it came with long, lonely nights. You've started choosing light, not the bright light outside, but the quiet, steady light growing within you. And that light is Bach Coc. It is your spiritual strength returning, not loud, not rushed, but powerful enough to make darkness hesitate, sacred enough to make what no longer resonates with you leave on its own. Sweet soul, perhaps you've been through trials no one ever saw. You laughed, you held others, you lit the flame for them, but forgot to hold yourself. So today, just pause, sit, breathe, and whisper gently to yourself, "I am returning to my original strength, and this time, I have nothing to prove to anyone." You don't need to be the light for someone else. Just being who you are is already enough to light up the world. And if something inside you stirred today, if you've made it this far and your eyes blur without knowing why, it's your soul remembering who you truly are. You are no longer alone. You no longer have to carry it all by yourself. You've walked far enough to know real light doesn't come from hiding your wounds, but from embracing them and choosing to walk forward anyway. If these words touched something inside you, leave a comment. I am ready to shine, without asking for permission. And if you're walking a path of healing, remember, you don't have to walk it alone. I'm here. And the light within you is still waiting for your return. Money, people say it's a tool, a form of energy, something that can buy time, attention, maybe even love. But in the world of the soul, money is not just matter, it is a symbol. Leather pouch. Now picture this. In the stillness of night, an old witch, draped in a silver cloak, coated with the dust of forgotten time, stands at the door of an ancient house. Her hand trembles as she grips a leather pouch, not to trade, not to keep, but to throw it away. Coin by coin, each one hitting the ground with a dull, thunderous sound, like the collapse of something invisible, yet ancient. She doesn't cry, but her eyes, they are the eyes of someone who knows the spell no longer works. And she doesn't fear the coins, she fears the light that's approaching. She fears you. My love, sometimes what makes us cry isn't the wound itself, but the moment we realize we've let others define our light for far too long. And if you're still here, if your eyes have ever welled up over something you couldn't quite name, if there's a part of your heart that's quietly aching, then pause, just for a moment, and ask yourself, the person the witch is staring at in fear, could it be me? I once believed that the light inside me needed someone's permission to shine. I tried to shrink myself, to soften, to stay quiet, just to be loved. I thought that if I was good enough, if I followed all the unspoken rules, I wouldn't be left behind. But one day, without warning, I stood in front of the mirror and didn't recognize the person looking back at me. I couldn't hear my real voice anymore. I no longer knew what was truly me and what was just survival. Have you ever felt like that? Like you lost yourself in someone else's comfort? Have you ever dimmed your light just so you wouldn't be too much? Ever asked, if I live as my truest self, who would stay? Maybe that's when you saw the eyes of your first witch. Not someone outside of you, but the shadow within. The part of you that believed you were too much. The part that bowed its head, made sacrifices, endured quietly, just to avoid being alone. But once light has been awakened, it can never be put out again. You might delay, you might forget for a while, but eventually, when the universe whispers, when your soul knocks gently, you won't be able to turn away from yourself any longer. And that is why you're here. Not by accident, not by coincidence. You're here because you're ready to reclaim yourself. You've grown tired of pleasing others. You've been hurt enough to understand true love doesn't ask you to sacrifice your soul. And you've awakened just enough to know the right ones won't ever ask you to hide your light. And if you're wondering right now, am I strong enough to keep going? Then I need you to hear this, clearly, deeply. You've always been strong enough. Not because you've never been afraid, but because even afraid, you still chose to move forward. The greatest lessons I've learned didn't come from books. They came from breaking, from being misunderstood even when my intentions were good, from loving people fully who turned away because I no longer fit the version of me they were comfortable with. I cried, I raged, I shut down, but eventually I learned this one truth. No one can save me if I'm the first one to abandon myself. And maybe some people will never understand your light. That doesn't mean your light is wrong. Maybe you've made others uncomfortable, not because you were cruel, but because your truth left no room for their pretending. And maybe the witch who's trembling now isn't someone else at all. Maybe it's a former version of you, shaking quietly in the shadows, knowing she's about to be replaced by a version too radiant to hide. So today, I ask you, are you ready to return to yourself? The version of you you once left behind in some quiet memory? Just because someone said you were too much? Do you love yourself enough to say, I don't need to be accepted in order to be myself? Do you have the courage to look at the witch and say, thank you, but I no longer need you to protect me. I can light my own path now. If you're still reading this, if your heart just tightened and you don't know why, maybe your soul is quietly nodding. So leave a comment as an opening door. I've come back, and this time I will not abandon myself again. And love, if you think this journey has already gone deep, get ready, because what comes next is the message the universe has been saving for the very end. When your light rises, who will show up to say goodbye to your former self? And who is waiting at the end of your road with a ring and a buried chest of truth? So why did she throw the money? Why didn't she run? Why didn't she vanish? Why didn't she cast another spell? The answer lives inside your heart, especially if you've ever felt like someone was trying to buy your silence. If you've ever felt someone treated you kindly, only so you'd stop seeing the truth. If you've been in relationships where love meant gifts, conditions, and silent contracts, money, in the hands of the witch was no longer a symbol of power. It was a confession. The last attempt to shield herself from the light she could no longer control. She knew. She couldn't manipulate you anymore. She couldn't silence you with kindness or sympathy or favors. She couldn't make you bow anymore, because this time, you saw it all, and you didn't look away. Have you ever known someone like that? Someone you once respected, trusted, even loved, but one day you realized what you had was built on exchange, not freedom. Someone who gave you everything except permission to be yourself. That's why the act of throwing the money wasn't about rejecting wealth. It was about despair. It was the panic of darkness facing a light that could no longer be bribed. Money isn't evil, but when it's used to control, it becomes a chain. When it's used to silence, it becomes a curse. When it's used to keep you, it becomes a golden cage. What has held you back? A gift? A promise? An opportunity you couldn't turn down? A relationship that cost you your freedom just to maintain? If you nodded, then you know what the witch is really throwing. Not money, but fear. The fear of losing control. And you, the one who carries the fire of Bach Coc, you no longer belong to that place. You no longer stay silent to keep the peace. You no longer nod to be loved. You no longer abandon yourself just to hold on to something that no longer resonates. You've outgrown the coins that once held you down. You're stronger than the promises that once blinded you. You're awake enough now to know anything that demands your soul in exchange isn't worthy of your soul. Bach Coc, your inner fire, cannot be bought, cannot be bargained with, does not need to be explained. And that is what makes the witch throw everything away. Because your presence alone is enough to break every false spell. If someone is trying to keep you close through favors, conditions, or so-called care, listen to your soul. Ask yourself, do I really need this? Or am I just afraid to lose something I used to cling to? Because sometimes what you're holding on to isn't love, but the fear of being left behind. And the light within you is whispering, let go, so both of you can finally be free. If these words touched something deep in you, leave a comment. I'm no longer afraid of my light. And if you've ever been silenced by love that came with conditions, you weren't wrong for believing. But today, you get to choose again. You get to choose you. Light isn't always gentle. Sometimes it comes like fire, burning away everything old to make room for what is right. It doesn't come to hurt you. It comes to free you from what you've been quietly enduring for far too long. And if today some part of you quietly dissolved, it wasn't loss, it was rebirth. If anything you've heard here has stirred your spirit, leave a message as a sign, as a vow. I choose the light, even when it's not easy. I choose myself, even when not everyone understands. And if you need someone to walk this path with you, I'm here. You don't have to walk through this alone anymore.